Hi everyone, it's Rachel from Desert Blossom Crafts back with another crochet pattern. Today I get to show you how to make this adorable crochet wreath ornament. I'm all about getting ahead on your Christmas gifts early, and this would be the perfect chance to do that. If you haven't heard, this ornament is a part of a Christmas in July crochet along happening from July 16th to 29th. We'll be making 12 crochet ornaments together. I would love to have you join, even if you're finding this a little bit late. If you find this video way after July, of course you can still make all 12 ornaments. All the patterns will be available, and so I'll put lots of information on all of that in the description box, as well as link to a few videos here. But for this video, we're just going to learn how to make this wreath. We will get right into the tutorial. As far as materials go, you're going to need some worsted weight yarn and an H or 5mm crochet hook. For this wreath, I used Lion Brand Heartland yarn, and I did really like the way it turned out with that. It has this really cool marled look, so it's not necessarily a solid, but you can use other green worsted weight yarns if you have that too. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using Caron Simply Soft. I found that one works great as well. Getting started with your wreath is not very hard. We're just going to chain 8 to begin, because we're actually just going to be making a thin rectangle that we're going to transform into that wreath, and I'll show you more about that later. But for now, we've chained 8, and we're going to single crochet in the first stitch. We're going to skip the first chain and single crochet in the second chain from hook. And now we're going to make what is called a little mini puff stitch. So let's learn this stitch together because we're going to be using it a lot. Insert your hook into the next chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook again, pull up a loop. Now you should have 4 loops on your hook. Just yarn over and pull through all 4 of them. To finish off this row, we're going to alternate single crochets and puff stitches. So single crochet in the next stitch, and now let's do that puff stitch again. Insert hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert hook, pull up a loop, and pull through all 4. Now we have 2 single crochets and 2 puff stitches. We're going to make another single crochet, 1 more puff stitch, and 1 more single crochet. And that is row 1 all done, and this is going to be the right side where you can see the puff stitches. Row 2 in every even row is extremely simple. You're just going to chain 1. This will not count as a stitch. Turn and single crochet in every stitch across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So you should always have 7 single crochet by the time you get to the end of an even row. Now row 3 is going to be similar to row 1 but slightly different. So we're going to chain 1, puff stitch in the first stitch this time. And now we're going to alternate across, but we're just going to start with the puff stitch. So that's the difference. The last time we started with the single crochet. So this time the single crochet is the second one, then puff stitch, then single crochet, puff stitch, single crochet, and 1 last puff stitch. Now there's just one more step at the end of this row. We need to also slip stitch into this last stitch. If we didn't, this puff stitch right here just wouldn't look right when we turn. So we need to slip stitch into the same stitch again. And this slip stitch will not count as a stitch, so just go ahead and tighten it so that it brings the puff stitch down, but we're not counting it as a stitch. So now chain 1, turn, and when you make your single crochet row, remember we're not working in this slip stitch. We're going straight into the puff stitch for our first one, and then working our 7 single crochet across total. So there we have it, and when we count them, we have 7. because we did not work in that slip stitch. Row 5 is going to be exactly like row 1, except we're not working in a chain this time, we're working in single crochet. So we're going to chain 1 and turn, single crochet in the first stitch, so this time we're starting with our single crochet again, and then alternate across, puff stitch, single crochet, puff stitch. I'll do it slowly again for you. 4 loops on our hook, pull through all 4, and single crochet, and then 1 more of each, puff stitch and single crochet, and that is row 5. And at this point we now know the row repeat for the rectangle. You're going to repeat rows 2 through 5 until you have 35 rows. So I'm going to go back to, this is row 2, right, the regular single crochet row. Row 3 is the one with puff stitches where you start on either end and then you slip stitch at the end to make sure that last puff stitch looks good. Then we have another regular single crochet row, and then we have a row with only 3 puff stitches where we start with single crochet on each end. So what this does is it makes the puff stitches offset from each other, so we have 4 and then 3, 4 and then 3, rather than them being stacked on top of each other. So to make your wreath, just keep repeating rows 2 through 5 until you have 35 rows, and I will meet you back when I get there. Alrighty, so here is my rectangle done. I have 35 rows. At this point, row 35 should be ending on a row 3 repeat, but just so you know, it does not really matter what row you end on. So if you want to adjust the length of the rectangle, you can totally do that. It doesn't really make a difference if you end on a row 2 or row 3 or row 4, whatever. So the next thing we want to do is grab our ponytail holder. You can really use any kind of ponytail holder for this. This is just a thin one that I had. And what we're going to do is place it over the rectangle. So I'm going to put it so that the wrong side is facing out. So not the side with the bobbles or the puff stitches, but the side that's more flat. So I'm going to hold the rectangle kind of diagonally facing to the right, and then I'm going to take the ponytail and put it over the corner right here. So you want it over the corner where the working loop is. I mean, I guess technically it's over this corner without the working loop, but you're putting it over where the working loop is originally. And now we're going to start attaching it. So I'm just going to situate this about right here, and then I'm going to fold it in half so that we catch the ponytail in between each half. Now there's one more thing we need to do before we start crocheting with it over, because if we leave it like this, the yarn will be under the ponytail in a weird way. So you want to make sure that your yarn is on the outside of the ponytail. That's one thing I forgot to do. So now we're all ready. So now we can fold it in half, and now we're just going to start slip stitching around the entire thing. So I'm going to start by going in this first stitch on the other side, and then going back through the same stitch, kind of the bottom of the stitch we just worked in, and making a slip stitch. Alright, and that is our first step to attaching this. We're just going to keep slip stitching like this around. So I'm going to place my hook through. Sometimes the spaces can be a little hard to get into, but just wiggle your hook in and bring it out carefully and slip stitch. So I'm just going to keep doing this. And you just kind of want to find the most logical places to put your hook and space out the slip stitches as evenly as possible. So I usually go, I think, above the stitch, kind of like right here in this hole. And then I kind of go on the sides of the stitch right here. These are a little bit looser and easier to put my hook into. Now this is more the tighter space. Oh, but sometimes you'll accidentally catch a little bit in it, so be careful when you pull your hook out. And then here's more the looser space. And slip stitch. So now let me take a step back and show you what this looks like. You kind of have it like this. You can see now it's starting to form its way around the ponytail. Now you might think this looks way too long to go around here, but the truth is you're going to scrunch it up as you go around, and it's going to make it just perfect when you get to the end so that you have your nice wreath like this. So just keep slip stitching all the way around. And scrunch it up as you go. If it gets a little bit tight, that's okay. Just keep scrunching it and pulling it and then slip stitching. And I'll meet you back when I get closer to the end. Okay, so I'm getting super close here. I just have a little bit left. I've just been scrunching it around. You can kind of work with it a little bit and get it to lay flat as you go along. Now, I'm just going to keep on doing this till I get to the end. So let's do these last slip stitches together here. Insert in both sides. Sometimes I just use my finger to grab the loop I want to go in because it can be a little bit tricky. Make our slip stitch. We just have about 2 more. One, and here's our last one. Yay. Okay, so now we've gotten to the end. And the last thing to do is to close the wreath by sewing it right here. And we will work with it and make sure it's all evenly spaced after we sew it. But for now, go ahead and cut your yarn and thread it with a yarn needle. Okay, so here is my end with my yarn needle. Now, to finish this, we are just going to sew these two together. Don't worry about it not laying perfectly flat right now. We will deal with that in a second. But first, let's just sew this together. So I'm just going to go in the top of the other side. And you can really sew this using any seaming method. I think I just kind of went back and forth between it, trying to make it look as invisible as possible. So there, and then I'll come and just go right here, back, and we'll go here, and here's our last one here, and that's pretty secure. Now let's bring this to the back of the work, and we actually need to do the same thing on this side because we were making a tube, so that it still has a hole right here. So we need to do this again. So just bring the needle through, and we're just going back and forth. Alrighty, so when you are done sewing it up, you are all done with the wreath. Now, in order to get it to lay flat, just start kind of working with the fabric around. You just want the bobbles here to lay as evenly as you can. Get them to around the scrunchie, around the ponytail holder. And then once you do that as best as you can, you just want to kind of flatten it out with your hand and then block it. Steam block it, and that will really help it lay flat and just keep everything in place. Now, since we have the wreath done, the very last step is just to make the bow for the wreath. Now this is super simple. I've just taken 2 strands of a different colored yarn and I'm just going to tie them in a bow. So just start with them longer to be safe, but then we will cut it at the end. So I'm just going to make a loop like this, leaving some yarn on this end, and then I'm going to bring it around and bring it through to make a bow, just like your typical bow. Now at this point you can adjust it to get the exact size you want, and then if you'd like you can double knot it to make sure it's extra firm and doesn't come out. So whether you double knot it is up to you. I think I actually didn't double knot it on my first one because I didn't like the way it was just like bigger in the center. So if you want to just do a single one, then you can just sew it on, and the stitches that you do through it will help it not come undone. So once you've got the bow just how you like it, just take some green yarn and attach the bow. I just came up from the back and kind of caught it in the back of the knot so that it didn't show in the white, and then I just did that a few times and knotted it at the end and wove in the end. So that's really all there is to making this cute crochet wreath. I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. One last thing, if you want to learn how to attach a hanger to your wreath, I do have a video that you can check out. I'll put it right down here. I show you 2 easy methods, and one of them gives you a pretty cool trick for having less ends to weave in. Check that out if you want, and I hope I'll see you around my channel more when I release more new crochet patterns and tutorials. Thanks for watching. Bye!